want to say before I do my prepared draft is I want to do a shout out to the faculty who lost their jobs as a result of the strike. I don't think I realized at the time what a huge sacrifice they made, bigger than a lot of us who made strikes. One of them was here until a few minutes ago, Anatol Anton. I wanted to kind of give him a shout out. He was in the philosophy department, and he was the guy who taught me my Marxism, basically. And he bounced from one community college job to another, for about a dozen years while he was trying to raise a family before he was finally hired back. And his old colleagues, his old tenured colleagues, finally made him the chair of the philosophy department. And I wrote him a letter saying, glad to hear it, I'll bet Hayakawa was rolling over in his grave if the worms haven't eaten it already. So I want to talk about something that's been mentioned earlier in the day. I'll go into it maybe a little bit more detail. But let me start off by reading something that was in the last Sunday's New York Times Book Review. If I can read it. Until recently, the funding gap between our state colleges and our elite schools was fairly modest. But since 1990, that gap has exploded, so that elite colleges may have an endowment dollars per student ratio of more than $1 million, compared with less than $35,000 per student at a typical college. Since 2008, state legislatures have cut approximately $14 billion in funding from public universities, or approximately 20%. These schools make up the difference with tuition hikes, which forces them to compete with one another for the small slice of wealthy out-of-state students who can pay double or triple fare. This is higher education reduced to free market principles, a world in which universities behave more like businesses than schools, pursuing customers rather than students. So that's the introduction to what I'm about to read. During the first month of the strike, when the college administration, before Hayakawa took over, when the college administration was still trying to maintain at least a pretense of giving BSU and TWLF demands a fair hearing, classes were suspended for a college-wide convocation. Strike leaders effectively used the opportunity to explain the 15 demands and rally mass support. During the entire convocation, I don't recall any administration spokesperson actually argue that the demands were unjustified. Instead, what we heard over and over and over again was, we can't afford it. The college is $750,000 in debt. Well, some of us started to wonder what was behind all that. A bit of investigation revealed that the state college's budget woes were the direct result of the state's master plan for higher education, which Connell Persico referred to this morning. The master plan was adopted in 1960 with great hoopla under Democratic Governor Pat Brown, Jerry's old man. He was promoted as an ambitious progressive move toward accessible higher education. In reality, it was a sophisticated exercise in belt tightening. It sought to blunt growing public demand for college access by creating a three-tiered system of public colleges and universities. Its defining feature was that the less money your parents had, the less money the state of California would spend on your college education. Jacked up entrance requirements, another thinly veiled attempt to economize, had the effect of largely excluding students of color. Black students made up 12% of the SF state student body when the master plan was first adopted. This was roughly equivalent to the African-American population of San Francisco at the time. 8 years later, the numbers had fallen to 3%. This is what prompted what may have been the most revolutionary of the 15 demands, that all students of color seeking admission to San Francisco State be admitted. On the eve of the strike, George Murray said, there are 4.5 million black and brown people in California. They all pay taxes to support this school, but none of those taxes go to black and brown people. The crackers still have the right to decide how many black and brown people will come into this school and how many will not. Well, this is one demand we did not win, and as a result, we're still dealing with it today. Outright discrimination is no longer fashionable, but college has become more inaccessible than ever. When I was a student here, I paid $125 a semester tuition. Today, it's over $7,000, and the college website advises prospective students to budget $27,000 a year to cover their living and schooling expenses. Instead of taxpayer dollars, San Francisco State depends more and more on corporate largesse and tuition so exorbitant that tuitions leave this place drowning in debt. A lot of people blame this on Proposition 13, the draconian property tax initiative that passed in 1978. Proposition 13 was supposed to provide tax relief to hard-pressed homeowners, but its main beneficiaries were large owners of business property, and its main impact was a massive shift of the tax burden off of business and onto the rest of us. It has also made it next to impossible for the state legislature to generate new sources of income to pay for education or other needed services. California used to spend more on education per capita than any other state. Now it ranks 44th in the nation. The toxic effects are obvious. This past year saw major teacher strikes in Oakland and Los Angeles, and growing anger at the way our public schools and colleges are being stripped of resources and forced to accept ever higher levels of direct corporate control as the price of solvency. But I think the strike itself offers evidence that this problem did not start with Proposition 13. It reflects a long-standing struggle for political power in the state, one that determines how the state government is financed, how our tax dollars will be spent, and whose interests will be served by those decisions. During the strike, we chanted, "Education is a right." People are still chanting it. Outrage over the defunding of public education has prompted an initiative on next year's ballot that will close the corporate tax loophole in Proposition 13. Right now, Walmart and Walt Disney are paying pretty much the same taxes they paid 40 years ago. The rest of us continue to pay through the nose. This ballot measure is called the Schools and Communities First Initiative. It aims to change that, and I hope everyone here will seriously consider doing what they can to make sure it passes. But I also hope we don't forget George Murray's words. This is not just about tax reform. It is about changing the basic power relations in the state and in our country. Until we resolve that issue, we're going to have to keep fighting the same battles over and over again. For me, that's really the unfinished business, the strike.